this party started.
Okay. Ready.
Let's start with our roll call, please.
Mr. Albright,
Here.
Ms. Banks,
Here.
Ms. Bell,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Present.
Ms. Carter, Ms. Clark, Dr. Elhai, Ms. Friedman,
Present.
Reverend Gordon,
Here.
Ms. Harding, Ms. Howe,
Here and present. She said she's here.
Ms. Mendoza-La, here. Ms. Rodriguez, yes, Chair. Mr. Sada, or Dr. Sada, and Major White, here.
All right, we'll start with recognition of our visitors. I'm going to start. My right, your left. Thank you. Welcome. All right, we're going to start with the meeting minutes. Is there a motion for those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any questions about the minutes? Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Motion passes. Minutes are approved. All right, Jenny, it's your show.
The financial statements for March are on page 7. We had grant payments in March, so you'll see significant expenses in the grant funded program line. And then the variance in that line, at 3.1 million so far for the year, is mostly due to Danny's Place and then some other Ohio Moss grants. The Ohio Moss grants, I think, like access to wellness and recovery housing, we likely won't spend, and we'll ask for carryover of those funds from them. Danny's Place may not be on budget at the end of the fiscal year, but the entire project should be. So it was just kind of a guess to which fiscal year it will fall in. And then for purchase of service expenses, it shows that we are have a budget variance of 1.5 million, but I'm going to remind you again that we have paid about 1.5 million to the agencies, and as soon as we reconcile that, we'll show the expense. So if you look at the balance sheet on the next page, you'll see in prepaid expenses we have 1.5 million, 152, that we have sitting in prepaid expenses until we reconcile that. So then switching to the balance sheet, significant change in cash, as I mentioned, mostly due to our bi-monthly grant payments that we had in March. And we also had significant payments out for Danny's Place. And then there were no other significant changes other than prepaid, and that was just March's advance payment to the agencies. And then our non-designated ward fund balance decreased to about 18 million as of March 31st. And there are payments on pages 9 through 11 and a motion on page 6.
All right, do we have a motion for the treasurer's report?
Motion. Second.
Any questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Motion passes. We're still hanging out with Jenny.
Okay, this is the big motion that you've all been looking for. This is the one we do every year. That's our base provider agreement contracts for next fiscal year. So it's a significant amount of money because it is our base that we pay. There's a chart starting on page 14 and it goes through page 16. And in the chart we have what the fiscal year 25, our current year allocations are. And then the next column is fiscal year 26 proposed allocations. If there was any 120-day notices and those had been resolved, it's noted in the notes column for those programs. So typically, the Board of Trustees approves a 2% increase for our programs that are achieving desired outcomes. Board staff had a desire to continue reducing our spending, so we did not put in 2% increases for the provider agencies' programs for fiscal year 26, and that will save us about $300,000 off the forecast expenses. And then, in addition to those reductions in the forecast, we also had about $850,000 reductions related to 120-day notices. So summing it all up, we had just shy of $1.2 million that we are saving from the financial forecast to actuals for fiscal year 26. Then while we are proposing that overall program allocations stay consistent with fiscal year 25, we did allow providers to request up to 15% in indirect costs versus previously we had 10% in administrative costs. And that was just to align with the federal rules changing on indirect cost rates. And then programs with a separate agreement that are not in the provider agreement, so that would be like, you're gonna see recovery housing later in the packet, and you're gonna see SOS 3.0 later in the packet. Those are not listed here because they have a separate agreement. Then in the, let's see, it starts on the bottom of page 15. It's titled non-certified agency allocations. We are proposing for all of those allocations to stay the same as they were in fiscal year 25. And then at the very end of page 16 is a section that's just information only. Those are pass-through allocations from Ohio Mass. And I have in there what the fiscal year 25 amount was, but it's all to be determined yet for fiscal year 26. And per our policy, you don't have to approve that section. We just give it to you for information. So I have two motions on the bottom of page 12. The first one is specifically task of Northwest Ohio due to a conflict of interest. And then the second one is everything else. So it's $21,511,965 for everything other than task. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
We'll get the motion on the table. We'll be able to do those two together. So is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Then any questions?
Just for clarification.
Yep.
We really already looked at these numbers, right? So for example, if we look at one that says, say Mercy, St. Vincent's, allocation approved in the 120-day notice process, this would have been talked about at a
Yes.
previous meeting.
Correct.
As you went through the process and we
Correct.
approved it, so this is just
Yes.
putting it back together for.
Yes. This is all inclusive. That's why those are specifically noted because you've already approved them. We've already talked about them.
Okay.
The 120-day notices.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other questions? Going forward? Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Abstaining? Motion passes. All right, administrative budget.
Okay.
This is on page 19 of your packet. And it looks like there's a lot of variances in amounts from fiscal year 25 current year to fiscal year 26. So I'm gonna kind of run through them with you. If you look at the table on page 19, the first column is our currently approved budget for this fiscal year. Then we have the next column is actual through March 31st. The third column is the proposed budget for fiscal year 26. That's what you will be voting on. And then the last column is increase or decrease from fiscal year 25. So if you look at everybody just looks at the bottom line. If you look at the total admin budget bottom line, current year is just over 3 million. We are proposing fiscal year 26 to be 2.99 million, and it's a reduction of 3%. Most of that is due to streamlined implementation fees being in fiscal year 25, our current year, that we will not have in fiscal year 26. So a lot of the other fluctuations that you see, I'll go through them, but a lot of them are just because we moved accounts around. I'll start with salaries. Those are easy. We are proposing a 3% increase of current salaries for staff depending on performance. And that is based on 23 FTE, excuse me. Then the other personnel costs are pretty standard formulas created there for personnel. When you get down into the non-personnel section, the biggest variance that you notice, actually I'm gonna go through the descriptions, because several of these accounts, we had all of our new ITP costs basically in one account. And we looked at it and said, that doesn't make any sense. Let's put it in the other accounts where it actually naturally fits and maybe change the name of some of those accounts. So I'm gonna go through each one of them. Electronic data interchange, which is the fourth one down in the non-personnel section. That was previously called professional services consultants. We are recommending to change it to better describe the costs in there. And that is our streamlined SmartCare and Microsoft Azure license for SmartCare. And as I mentioned, that significant decrease is because in fiscal year 25, we had implementation costs that we will not have in fiscal year 26. The next line that we are proposing to change is telephone. We are proposing to change to telephone/internet services. And you'll see an increase there because of two reasons. One, Ring Central, our telephone, in fiscal year 25 only had a partial year. In fiscal year 26 will be a full year. And then we're also moving Telesystem internet to that line. Liability insurance is budgeted just to increase based on current actual costs and does not include any liability related to Danny's Place. Maintenance agreements is recommended to be changed to service agreements. And the increase there is due to moving expenses from other account lines. So that account was previously just Erie Inc. And now it's Erie Inc., Arakita Managed Services, and Meritus Consulting. Professional Services MIS is recommended to be renamed Software and Software Subscriptions. That's toward the bottom, that's the third one from the bottom. And that increase is due, well, there's a couple things going on in that account. We had a couple things roll off that are not needed now that we have ITP, but we also increased it because things were moving from the other line. And that includes Intuit QuickBooks and Creatio CRM. Then we are proposing to create a new account called Leased Equipment, and that would be the First American Equipment Leasing for our computers. And then the last line there, Professional Services Miscellaneous, you can see the significant decrease there. That's where we had all of the ITP expenses that we decided. I mean, why put it in a miscellaneous account when we can actually put it with other accounts that make sense? So in all, it's a decrease of $88,076 from fiscal year 25. And there is a motion on page 18. I should also mention that it's approximately 540,000 less than what was in the forecast, but the forecast also includes 500,000 for ITP phase 3. That is not in this proposed budget because that'll come before the budget.
All right, let's get the motion on the table here. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All right, questions?
Question, under the liability insurance, obviously clearly it's a minute amount, but is that liability insurance a standalone or is that a share that we would pay for the overall county, tied into the county cost?
It's both. We have both in there. So we pay a portion to the county, but we also have our own traveler's insurance.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I
just wanted to get clarification, Jenny, on the service agreements, we moved, all of the, when you say service agreements, are those the subscriptions to like Microsoft? And I just wanted to wrap my brain around service agreements, cause it's not necessarily service, it's program too, right?
No, I mean, so the biggest thing that's in there is Arakita, who is our outsourced IT solution right now. So I mean, if you look, current year was only $1,300. I think Erie Inc. total budget was only 5,000. The rest is Arakita and then Meritus, which is a consulting to help us with our CRM.
Okay, okay. I just needed to get a better understanding of.
Yep.
So it's IT and then the consulting for CRM, okay. So then the CRM that's down by software and subscriptions,
That is
that's the
fee for
actual
software.
CRM,
Yep.
okay, that's
Yep.
where I was getting I think a little like,
Yes,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Does everybody know what CRM is? Customer Relations Management Software. It was the recommendation of the ITP to connect our CRM with our billing software so that we can do better data integration and better data decision.
All right, any other questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Motion passes. All right, Jenny. Go on till later. Substitute cycle.
The proposed subsidy schedule for fiscal year 26 is on page 21. So each year we update this for the poverty guidelines. And that's basically all that's been done here, other than elimination of rider code H. So if you'll remember, we had many discussions about rider code H. That was 250 to 300% of poverty. And in January of 2025, we actually, you voted and we sent it to our agencies to approve elimination of that. So that is not gonna be included in the fiscal year 26 subsidy schedule, but nothing else has been changed in this other than the poverty guidelines. And there is a motion on page 20.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? A motion.
Second,
Questions? All right, those in favor? Aye. Those against? Abstaining? Motion passes. Okay, Elijah.
We turned it to page 22. This will be our health officer motion. We reviewed 2 applications, one new application, one full application. Because it's a small group, we didn't include their demographics explicitly in the description, but it's captured in this graph here. We're working on trying to show a more dynamic view of changes. So you'll see from December to May, we have 1 new health officer within the system. This, people come and go, which is why, sometimes when we get more, we'll see a lot of applicants come through, but then there's health officers coming out, which explains some of the lack of seeing the fluctuation in the number that we have. We bring this motion to you right. So if you want to take that motion and, upper middle of the page, and then I can go through the next part, which is just a little information for you.
You have a second? Have any questions?
Yeah, this second part is just kind of information only.
No, they have to vote. It's first and second.
Okay, so those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Abstaining? Motion passes. Okay.
So So you'll remember our discussion at our January meeting about our health officers and wanting to increase
Yeah.
representation. We wanted to come back in a timely manner, but here we are today. So we've been working with our health officer advisory group, talking internally, talking externally about, what can really help our system. Understanding that in a larger context, the state is also working on workforce issues. So our situation in Lucas County is not unique in the state. There's workforce issues here within the state and nationally. We didn't want to bring something that would go directly against what the state might decide on what they want to do with the workforce issue. So here we have kind of a variety of strategies that we're working on implementing to help increase the representation and competence of health officers. So later on, you'll see in the designation of health officer policy, we're going to include LPNs, licensed practical nurses, as being eligible to become health officers. This was recommended from our health officer advisory group. There are a number of LPNs they hire. In fact, that is more commonly hired in some of our agencies because our registered nurses are hard to get, especially with the shifts in community mental health versus a 12-hour shift at the hospital. So we believe that can help increase some of that representation. There's also a number of clinicians who work locally but do not live locally. So they zoom in or for telehealth to do assessments and ongoing therapy and things. Other counties allow for the application for involuntary admission, the pink slip, to be done virtually. So we're going to explore that and clarify if that can be done virtually, and then allow those clinicians to become health officers who just work remote. We also, our agencies really appreciate the health officer training. That's a very important factor. They want their staff to go through it in a live version. However, sometimes scheduling that live training is difficult because it's time and resources that ZEP provides to do it. So we need a good pool of people to be there. And so we can only do it every so often. It was recommended to develop a high quality recorded training that agencies can upload to their continuing education system. So as soon as they onboard a new staff who meets the qualifications, they can do that initial training and then move forward with the application. We'll still keep the live training because that's important, and the advisory group felt they really appreciated that experience going through the training. But this is just going to offer a little more responsiveness to get people through the application process. And finally, it's within our policy now, but as you'll see, that our designation of health officer policy is a very long policy. In fact, it's our longest policy. So things get buried in there, but we're going to be conducting at least the annual cultural competence training specific for our health officers. Understanding that these strategies aren't going to radically transform the system overnight, that pool of health officers, but we want to ensure that the ones who are currently serving as health officers are culturally competent and taking that with them as the state explores strategies to address the workforce issues, and we continue to work on these locally. So that was just some information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
If an agent, oh, I'm so sorry, please.
Go ahead.
If we record, let's say we recorded and all that good stuff, the training and whatnot, would maybe somebody who's been through the live version be able to do that as the refresher to maintain? And if so, thinking about verification.
Yeah,
So I'm just sitting here thinking, well, if we did that, it's a great for introduction, but it's also a great review.
Yeah, I'm sure there would be health officers who've not had an opportunity to write a pink slip. I'm sure there'd be health officers who would want to review that training from time to time anyway. Currently, our process for renewal is that they have to have done an assessment within the last 2 years, or their agency has to attest to their ability, that they still have the ability to do that.
I wanted to thank the staff for at least taking the time to make the effort to come up with some innovative ideas to respond to questions. As some of these work, you'll explore, and some may work and some may not, right? So you'll continuously monitor that to see which is more effective than the other.
Yeah, and I think we'll start to see that in kind of as we continue to show a little more dynamic, those percentages change from time to time.
Are there anybody in Vital Corps at the jail designated as health officers, or do they not meet the requirements? Maybe they don't live here or what?
We're not able to authorize any health officers with Vital Corps yet because they are not Ohio Mass certified.
However, they do have a doctor and others that have an independent ability to issue an involuntary commitment. So, you know, we as a group, you as a board, authorize health officers. There's a whole other group of people by statute that can pink slip, including probation officers and law enforcement officers, and psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. Nurses.
I recently attended a workshop that talked about the opportunity of virtual workshops and virtual counseling, and they said that that is something coming to fruition because they will be able to utilize counselors in areas that they really are needed. So it's ironic that it's happening. I don't mean ironic. I mean that ironic to the time that I took the class is what I mean. But that is coming to fruition that virtual is going to work, and it'll help us to support our clients and to help our counselors reach out to others that haven't had the services before.
I like the idea of adding LPNs to that, but I'm curious why was that not considered before? It seems so reasonable. Is there something different?
I couldn't hear.
I got no answer to that.
Yeah, I
So
think
I'm looking
historically,
at LPNs, licensed practical
think
nurses.
about nursing profession until probably more recently, we had more SGD treatment and the medicated assisted treatment. Nurses weren't as heavily utilized, but now that we have more integrated care, integrated care with medical homes embedded, agencies are using more nurses now, and they're finding that they're able to get more LPNs than RNs. I mean, in the hospital, you know, we don't even see RNs working on like psychiatric floors because of the preference for registered nurses there. But yeah, it is interesting, and it was a good recommendation, I think.
So talking about a behavioral health aspect, right? So it's been my experience working in a hospital that people like to do the job they've been trained for, and it's hard sometimes to cross over if you haven't been trained in that aspect. And so when I would work with nurses, you know, as caring and compassionate as nurses are, and if you've worked with a nurse, you know how caring and compassionate they are. It doesn't necessarily mean they want to do that particular job. So being trained, then they would feel competent to do it, but that's been my experience. When you would ask them to ask those particular questions until they've been trained, they feel like, no, just, they would prefer not to, so.
That makes sense.
It's a level of professionalism.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Elijah? All right. Elijah, SOS 3.0.
So we had the
Elijah, could you speak louder?
we had the opportunity to apply for a cost extension with the state opiate and stimulus response grant. There was it was interesting because we couldn't apply for any new projects, so it could only be projects we had previously funded, and we had already received different types of funding for recovery housing. So what we had funded previous was a lot of recovery houses and a few services that are no longer active, such as the Project Direct Link, which was medication assisted treatment in the jail. So we looked at this and talked to our agencies to see if the funds could be utilized effectively. So we, out of all the programs, we found that we could fund Zeph Center's withdrawal management, Harbor's Chrysalis program, which is a residential treatment for women, and Unison's youth treatment services. So kind of the quick formula here was we looked at the time of award and to the end of the fiscal year and base it on kind of the previous budget that they submitted when we funded them before to determine a good allocation of what they could spend. And then the rest, because Zeph and Harbor's programs are both 24/7, there's a significant staff cost. We just split the rest up and gave them each the amount. They've submitted budgets for this and are confident that they could each utilize this in a timely manner. We have until the end of September 2025 to use this funding. So you'll see $94,734.05 each for Zeph and Harbor, and $37,893.62. So like all the SOS funds, they have to do GPRAs, which is the Government Performance and Results Act. These are assessments that help determine the success of the program. So you'll see motions at the bottom of this page to that effect.
Is there a motion to approve? We'll do them all together.
Second.
Right, any questions? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstaining? Motion passes. And we have Elijah one last time for recovery housing.
So several months ago, we were given the opportunity through the Ohio Office of Development to apply for recovery housing funding. Similar to funding we've gotten before, it took a while. They're still working out their kinks. I think they're kind of new to working on this with our system, but we were one of 11 boards to receive funding for recovery housing. So this funding is for individuals who, with substance use disorders, with incomes at or below 50% of the median income. We were awarded just over $300,000 to serve about 52 clients. Now, at the time of application, the rental subsidy was $691 per month per client. I think we won't be able to serve as many because that rate has gone up since being awarded the application. We're at about $724 now in rental subsidies. So this motion, similar to ones in the past, we're recommending establishing a pool of funds for agencies to basically bill us for these monthly rents, similar to what they're doing now. This would be for Zeph Center, T. Whitehead Recovery Center, Ohio Guidestone. And administrative costs are allowable for these participating agencies. We do not have unison in this motion because they're still in the process of being certified, recovery housing being certified. So when they get that, and if there is money remaining, we'll bring that to, get that ability, but can't put them in here yet because it's still pending. So these funds are good till through the end of June 2026.
Question, the established monthly rent subsidy, is that what these different housing, recovery housing charge a month? I mean, I guess my real question is if I don't need that full amount, then does that go back into the pool? I mean, how, I mean, just wondering how that works.
Yeah, so this is an amount set up through looking at the housing stock and what like a studio apartment would be.
Okay, okay, so it's an average, is what you're saying,
I think it's the HUD single room occupancy,
Yeah.
or,
okay,
so it's, 724 sounds awful familiar.
So it's their rate, they tell us, based on,
that you can do up to that amount
Fair
or
market rate.
that amount?
yeah, that amount.
Oh, so if somebody needed less, then they wouldn't qualify for this?
So what we do is, if they're only there for like, let's say half a month, 15 days, we would average that out and only pay for the 15 days.
So
Okay.
you prorate it?
Okay, all right, good, okay, I was just wondering, like, how is that all gonna work? Cause we could potentially still serve the same amount of people if somebody's not there for the full 30 days.
Is there a maximum amount of time that they can stay there?
That is a good
and still be
question.
funded?
The previous funds we had and are still using was 2 years. The specifics, all the specifics are still being worked out for this. Actually, Scott has a link to a contract, which we have to sign once it's all approved, and then we'll be able to get more of those specifics. They usually send a contract, but it's a link, and sometimes those links get messed up, so we don't want to dig around too much into it.
If a resident is working part-time, they pay part of that themselves, right?
Okay, let's, is there a motion to approve, in the middle of page 24?
Second.
And are there any further questions?
Question, are the funds, what is the basis for the distribution of the funds? Is it competitive? Is it first come, first serve?
At the agency level, it's first come, first serve.
I mean, for us to distribute the funds, so it's
Yeah.
first come, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So if the dollar amounts aren't allocated to any one agency, it's if I have 20 and I'm a recovery house and I qualify and I'm on this, I get my 20. And then, okay. I just want to make sure I understood the first come, first serve.
Yeah, so they,
Thank you.
it's a pool of fund, and so they just bill us monthly, and we have tracking sheets that, per client, and what days they're there.
Okay, awesome.
And then my last question on that would be the administrative fees. How is that determined? Is there a max? Is there a basis for it, or what is the rationale associated with that administrative fee?
The current round that we have, Ohio Mass did not tell us a specific amount. They said it couldn't be more than 10%, but the amount that they gave us specifically for administrative costs didn't equal 10%. So we gave 10% initially, and then when the administrative funds were gone, they were gone. I don't know how these are gonna work for sure, because it's still to be determined.
We just got an email today that said they're still working out
So we will ultimately develop a policy or protocol for this distribution of funds.
I wanna clarify what you just said. There will be contracts. And so those items are always clarified within the contract.
So if you don't know the administrative costs, couldn't that
We
occur?
won't issue the contract until we know that. We haven't done the link to, we haven't signed the contract yet for the funds because I don't have authority to do that until you approve it. So it's a chicken or egg kind of thing.
Just gotta wait.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for bringing us on to further details. All right.
Yeah, we were at
Yeah, we did.
questions.
We already did that. Okay, so now we just have to do. Right? You need to vote on it. We already did that.
Yeah, because there was a second round of questions.
That's right, okay. All right, so on to the next thing.
Oh.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Motion passes. All right, so now we are gonna go back to Jenny,
It's the fun part.
policies.
Don't act like it's not fun.
Come on.
It's big fun.
Okay, so I have just my policies alone in this packet. I have 11 of them to be presented. So I'm gonna go pretty high level, just the changes that were made in them, and then you guys feel free to ask any questions on any specifics. So the first policy starts on page 26. And I am gonna note, first off, we had some issues when we tried to do track changes and anyways. So I marked in red what I changed. You can't see the original, but I marked in red, and I'll explain what I changed about them. So the first one is account reconciliation. The changes there, I changed the titles. So Assistant Director of Finance, it was previously Manager of Finance. And then Director of Finance, I believe, was previously Associate Director. And then I included the word electronically because we store everything electronically now. We don't have any paper files, so I wanted to be specific about what we were doing there.
Congratulations.
I'm gonna keep moving unless someone stops me on any of the policies. The next one is authorization for expenditures. The biggest changes here were updating Board of Trustees versus MHRSB, and then changing Ohio MOS to Ohio Behavioral Health. So as you go going through the policy section, that's pretty much what the changes are there. The other change, the only really significant change is on page 29, and that was an update to Ohio Revised Code. On board expenditures approval on page 30, again, just some updating of titles. And in number 2, under the procedure, adding Assistant Director of Finance versus just Director of Finance. And then on number 3, you could see in red, it says all MHRSB payments are made directly by the Office of the Lucas County Auditor. That was pulled from another policy and included here. And that policy you'll see later on is recommended to be deleted. So I just wanted to make sure it was captured in a policy. By board financial statements audit on page 32, again, just updating Board of Trustees language. Board operating budget on page 33 is again updating Board of Trustees and Ohio Behavioral Health versus Ohio MOS. And that's significant there. On board payments on page 35, this is recommended for deletion because it is listed in, the items in this are also listed in several other payments, or several other policies that we have. So I went through and I made sure that everything is in a policy already, and so we can delete this because it's duplicative. On fiscal monitoring on page 36, again, just some update of titles, and then if you look on letter A, it says MHRSB staff will conduct annual agency reviews. The previous wording there said annual agency reviews or semi-annual non-Medicaid reviews, which seemed confusing and duplicative with the rest of that sentence. So I removed that. That's not something we really do anymore anyways. We do our annual reviews, and then if reviews are needed throughout the year, we do throughout the year. On fixed assets on page 38, the change in B where it says purchasing policy, that previously said purchasing/cash disbursements policy. We don't have a cash disbursements policy, so I'm not sure where that came from. But so I removed the cash disbursements part. And then again, just updating some titles of employees. On liability insurance on page 40, again, updating MHRSB versus 4. And then on the back page of that, page 41, there were two sentences that were very similar. So I removed the sentence that said the premium is presented to the board for review and is included in the admin budget. And I kept the sentence that you see there under G. Trustees approve the admin budget, which includes the annual. On uncollectible accounts receivable on page 42, there were some significant changes here in the policy. Mostly, I just changed the wording and clarified the actual accounting process in the top. So what actually happens when we have something uncollectible. But the reality is we don't. I mean, I can't remember having anything uncollectible in the time I've been here. So I updated what we would do in that scenario. And then I also changed the write-off of receivables from 5,000 to 25,000. And that was more just to make it consistent with Scott's approval of expenditures. So Scott is, per your decision, he is allowed to approve expenditures and contracts up to $25,000. So it seemed reasonable that in this policy, we would be able to make that decision internally of what to write off, up to 25,000. And then I made that change throughout the 5 to 25 and changed titles again. You have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We're just to where I was the most interested, so.
Okay. Withholding payments on page 44. So the changes that were made in here were mostly to make it match or closer match the wording in the provider agreement. So it's not necessarily changing, it's just making them consistent with each other. That would be up in the policy section, and then again down, if you look at C, D, and E, I just made that what is actually in our provider agreement.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's the end of my policies. I'm happy to answer any questions. There is a motion on page 25 in regards to them.
So moved.
Second. All right. We have a motion. Second, okay. Any questions? Good job, Jen.
Yeah, that was my big question, why all the change on the withholding, I just was like, that doesn't make sense, but now it makes complete sense.
Okay, any questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Motion passes. And then I believe Elijah is taking it from here.
So on page 46, you'll see a summary of the mission and programs policies that we'll be reviewing. There's 6 of them. There are no major changes except in the designation of our health officers policies. So through after hours access, client protection from monetary transactions, client protection from termination of services, client-focused provider network, and continuity of care. All of these changed board to MHRSB, and when appropriate, clarify whether it's the MHRSB or MHRSB trustees. So again, there's not significant changes to these policies. In your packet though, starting on page 52, is the designation of health officer policy. However, the track changes were not in the distributed packet. So that's why you have the supplemental one here. This will have the changes that I'll walk through more.
Okay.
So again, here, clarify MHRSB or MHRSB trustees, changing Ohio Mass to Ohio Behavioral Health. The big things I want to point out, you'll see on this page 53, we are adding the licensed practical nurse for individuals who are able to be health officers. We're making that requirement of 3 years of experience and assessment of individuals with severe mental illness consistent with registered nurses. We made sure any references to ORC, OAC were with the current language there. And then we removed requiring 2 written references on appropriate letterhead. So for our health officers, the agency takes responsibility for the health officers. How we've been doing it for the past few years is the agency had to write a letter of reference, and then they had to find an outside person to write a letter of reference about their ability to assess and perform as a health officer. It was difficult for people to get an outside reference. It took time for people to get their outside reference. Throughout the policy, we talk about the agency's responsibility for assuring that the health officer is qualified. They have to have a policy in place about training new health officers. So we just felt that was just an unnecessary burden when they're already taking responsibility for the health officer. And those are the major changes there. You'll see also the word transportation was misspelled, so we fixed that.
I saw that. I'm like, oh gosh, I would have missed that one too.
And then on page 51, you should see, page 46, you'll see a motion.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Any questions for Elijah? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Those abstaining? And motion passes. You?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. I'm going to pitch hit for Steve, who is our, as you know, our technology and a bunch of other names beyond that, strategic planning, and quality. So we are presenting 3 policies from the operations section. All 3 of the policies have been updated just modestly to reflect current environment. I'm going to draw your attention to page 58. The data backup and disaster recovery. We're renaming that policy to systems backup and disaster recovery. And while it looks like a bunch of changes, right? Because previously we used to do all this work internally. Now it's external and contracted through Arakita. So the policy itself indicates that we will do backup, formal backup, and have a disaster recovery infrastructure for all data technology systems, blah, blah, blah. The procedure then wipes out a bunch of the stuff that we used to do internally and pushes it over to, the board will utilize a cloud automated model, comprehensive cloud-based platform. Everything is kept in the cloud, everything is backed up, there's multiple backups, as a matter of fact. So we're able to eliminate a lot of that detail and just go with the way this process actually works now. And if you ask me what some of these acronyms are, I'll have to default to whatever, Steve. Obviously, his department oversees that. We have multiple redundancy in staff that take responsibility for this. We take this policy very seriously. When you start to read about these cyber attacks and what do you call those? When they infiltrate your system and you lock it out,
Hijack you.
ransomware.
Ransomware.
All of these items are designed to eliminate that concern to the extent that you can. Or if we would happen to get infected, we'd be able to wipe out the whole system, replan it from what our last known good backup is, which by the way, is always the easiest to identify, because sometimes they slip that ransomware in there and 2 months later it pops up. So you know, we're always thinking about that. We're always thinking about how do we protect the data. Obviously, you know, we're HIPAA compliant as well, so we have client data as well that is being stored through Streamline. And so we're very comfortable with the way this policy is reading now. Any other questions?
Should you back that up?
Daily. Oh, yeah. It's daily.
Possible to do it more than once a day?
It-
Practical?
It's probably not practical because it takes quite a bit of time to do. That's why we actually have to move it out of our system, because our bandwidth to update it would take over 24 hours to back it up. So now, through a lot of the efforts that we've been able to streamline and, you know, obviously moving to a cloud, it's all in Google storage or whatever storage that is for that. And then it's parsed out, you know, our Streamline is in a separate. But-
Artificial intelligence, someday it'll be possible to back it up.
There are a whole bunch of things that artificial intelligence can do that we're just scratching the surface with in this system. But I routinely use it for other things. So,
Have you ever had any attacks,
We-
attempts?
we have fishing expeditions, and our staff are well-trained in spotting that. And they know enough to stop and ask somebody.
Yeah.
They also know that if they happen to click on it and go, oh, they know to pull the plug. But it's routine that, oh, maybe every other week or so, somebody might get a questionable one and we'll kick it off to our IT folks. And, you know, our system quarantines it. First, if it's questionable, it automatically quarantines it. So it's not a matter of, you know, us letting it into the system. It captures it and sets it aside for investigation. And then what we also do is, it's very routine that if one staff member got it, then
Several.
others are gonna get it. Which is one of the reasons we removed all of our emails off of our websites. Which is one of those items that people don't think about, but yeah. But, you know, we get the standard stuff like, hi Jenny, this is Scott. I'm in a meeting right now. Can you get me 15 gift cards for $25,000 each? Scratch them off and send me the numbers. You know, we get that kind of stuff. And others. And we take this very seriously because we know that there were several other boards around Ohio that have been subject to a ransomware and has curtailed their business considerably.
They've gotten so fancy. We hired a new employee and on their third day, got a phone call from, a text from a fellow employee that wasn't a fellow employee, but didn't know it wasn't a fellow employee, and then kind of ignored it, but then got the email. So this right here is the way to go to lock it out. Within that same week, I went out. We're on the cloud now, and all this ransomware and all this stuff is
You
on.
can't be 100% foolproof, but you can knock out the vast majority of it with due diligence, and we have annual training on it.
I can only imagine how many you would get.
Julie,
The status.
Julie, who's sitting right there now, is the trainer for us, and we make sure that we are very diligent in keeping an eye on this. So moving on to the next policy, the data governance policy, simply reflected position changes. Remember, when we accepted the ITP plan, we created a data governance strategy. And while admittedly we have struggled to fully implement this, we have been moving forward with our ITP, and will be moving this process forward in the near future. And finally, the internet policy.
Scott,
Yes,
on these positions that are listed, are those all currently on our organizational chart or internally?
yes, they are all active positions. And by the way, thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to just take the liberty of doing a little sidebar. On April 28th, we had a new staff member join us. She couldn't be here today, Antoinette O'Connor. She's our new manager of prevention and recovery services. And why I bring that up, because it's the first time in 4 years we've been fully staffed. So, big news, big news. And we will not have any turnover but retirements in the near future. And then finally, internet use. It's a modest change to the policy, appropriately reflect the ITP and the cloud-based storage system. Given that we've been through the ITP process, everybody understands that data integrity and systems integrity is key. And so with our new laptops, use of Airpida, and these good sound policies, we really try to stay on top of a situation that is ever evolving. So happy to answer any questions related to that policy that I can.
All right, we have a motion on page 57. Second. Any further questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Those abstaining?
Okay, and this is the final group for today. And by the way, just to kind of set it up, P&O will be seeing quite a few more of these over the next several months as we prepare for our culture of quality audit certification, thank you, which is scheduled for. So we have to have all of our policies in place and reviewed, and then find evidence of the strategies that that are acting on. So we're in the, this is the, we're going to use a baseball strategy. This is probably the second or third inning right now. So we have 7 more innings to go. And no overtime, no extra. That's right, no extra innings. But so So the first one I want to bring to your attention is citizens' participation in planning. According to, Michael's out sick, so I'm pitch hitting for him today. We changed the language and the jargon that was less clear and as it relates to health equity and our intent to provide access of services to everyone. So we're reverting back to, that access to treatment language, priority that we've identified, if you recall. Crisis services, access to treatment, mental health housing seems to be our mantra for our priorities throughout this purchasing plan process. So Michael is making the recommendation of the enclosed language to just provide a little more clarity on what our intentions are. The client recommendation and advice policy does something similar. We all know, by the way, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We all know that DEI and some of the language that is associated with DEI is under assault. We have not taken any action internally other than some of this policy language change, and we don't anticipate taking any action internally until this body has given us the authority and responsibility to do so. And I would suggest that we have this conversation in a strategic planning session versus an unfacilitated process. But I have stated publicly, and I will state in this public meeting, we were the first into the DEI space in our community. We will be the last to step out of it if I have anything to say about it.
Here, here.
Here, here.
So, so we have that. We have the communication with the news media. Slight changes to number 6 and 7. Let me make sure I'm on the right page here. Made it clear that we will let individuals impacted by the media release know about requested info. Cleaned up language around HIPAA and client info protections. So pretty straightforward there. Updated some, obviously updated some job titles as well. The open meetings compliance just changed language around the board and updated that to be consistent across board when it's board staff, when it's board trustees. And then the final one is public access to records. Again, changed Mr. Spinelli's title and updated the addresses, language around the board. Minimal changes to those. I did instruct staff because I knew that it was going to be a longer meeting and there was a lot of heavy topics today to present some of the easier policies to consider. I don't think we'll be that lucky in the near future related to some of the policies coming up. So happy to answer any questions related to those policies. And there's a motion.
Question,
Yes, sir.
under the citizens' participation in planning. Just trying to get the clarification. I think I actually served on one of these committees prior to my appointment to the board many years ago.
Oh, you most definitely did. You were on one of our you were on the
Yeah.
original DEI committee.
So, therefore, what this means is that these committees can be established, but it must be chaired by a member of the board.
We always, when we have a committee of that kind of stature that might not necessarily be a work group, so to speak. Yes, we always want a board member to be the chairperson. Selfishly, because I want a champion from the board on that committee. We always, we have multiple venues for getting citizens interactions. That's just one of those. We are, our main, frankly, our main one we don't really talk about too much is, I don't even know, but I'm sure Michael does, how many community engagement meetings we do in a month, where we're out there in the community, talking to people, that feedback's coming back in, it's being captured, it's being discussed in our directors meetings so that program staff and finance staff and IT staff can hear. So there's, you know, then we do forums, we do surveys, we do a number of strategies.
Wouldn't you consider our open sessions one of them as well? I mean,
Absolutely.
anybody who wants to speak to the board has the right and the ability to twice a month for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. And we would always encourage folks to do that.
Thank you.
Looking at the internet use raises a couple of questions. Do the computers, do the employees have access to those outside of, on the board property?
Yeah, they're laptops.
Okay, and do we have, is this the full extent of the policy on personal use of office equipment?
Let me find the policy first.
About 66.
No others come to mind.
Okay. So basically, an employee is free to use the laptop at home as if it were their personal laptop, as long as they don't install things on, et cetera, et cetera.
We would not encourage them to use their personal laptop or use it as a personal laptop. Remember that pretty much anything you do on that is stored and becomes a public record and can be retrievable.
And what about use by family members or?
That, no, our safety policy, which you haven't seen, would prohibit that.
Okay, so there are
There is a
policies
safety,
elsewhere
right.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe this is not limited to internet use, the way it's captioned.
I would have to get back to you on that. I'm flying a little blind here.
Okay,
So-
and I guess my other question is, given some of our, you know, the governmental regulations around our equipment and information, such as HIPAA and whatever else there is out there. Do we have policies around, specifically around that?
You mean around how to protect? Yes, we have a privacy policy. We also have the ability, by the way, to remotely wipe the computer and your cell phone.
Okay, lost or stolen.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a policy around employees for any reason using any of the forms of AI?
We do
With
not.
respect to, I would encourage that we give some thought to that, again, because of governmental regulations. And you know, some of the AI, depending upon what you give it, it's not, doesn't have privacy and security wrapped in it, and it can be filtered out into someone else's prompt.
We'll need to do a little bit more investigation on that. I know enough about AI, mainly through ChatGPT, to
And
be
that's about what
dangerous.
I know. I just know enough that they tell you it's not.
We'll
Yeah, when you read the user agreement for ChatGPT, it tells you that it can use your ideas or whatever
Or
information
your
you
information or
anything like that.
yeah,
And
no,
it can go into another, because that's how they gather data.
Yeah, that's how.
Right, and that's how it learns.
That makes sense.
I did realize that. I do that because I mean, I've been using it for a while on certain products, and I've noticed that I'm now starting to get, I've used it enough that I'm starting to get some of the language that I put into it come back and show up in a different product.
So we should at least have a policy that addresses whether, if it's appropriate and okay to use, and when it is and when it isn't.
We can do, we'll do a number of different things. Hey, we'll check some industry standards on it, but also I'll check with my peers to see what they might be doing. So there might be a few boards that are ahead of us on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Couldn't even think of AI neighbor.
Okay, any other questions? So we already did our motion in a second, so let's vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? Oh, it wasn't a- no, I'm sorry, rewind. There was not a first and second on that one. So can I have a motion
Second.
and a second? Now, those in favor? Aye. Those against? And those abstaining? Okay, looks like we're going into open session. Yes, sir, Richard.
Is the microphone on?
At Government Center, I'll be brief. Nice to see the county commissioners yesterday acknowledging May as Mental Health Month. Scott was there, a number of the agency directors were there. That was a rescheduled meeting, I'm sorry to say. Since April the 8th, the county commissioners have canceled 7 meetings. Some they rescheduled, some they didn't. That includes next week. Their Tuesday meeting was moved to Monday, which does cause some problems. I've tried everything I can to find out what they're going to do about the levy review committee and the children's services levy that's coming up. If you recall the debacle last year, on May the 23rd, they went before the levy review committee. They were told by their legal counsel, yes, you can go a year early and you can't ask for an increase. The levy review committee agreed and unanimously approved it, and then they were told, no, you can't. So they had to come back again, and the decision was, let's go for a 1.5 new levy last year, which passed, but this year they've got to do it all over again, go for a 1.8 continuation. Now, given that the levy review committee, they're busy people, they have a problem with quorum, they'll probably need 2 meetings if they have some questions that aren't answered at the first meeting. And remember, the county commissioners need at least 2 meetings to approve this. One where they acknowledge it needs to be on the ballot, and the second one where they send it to the auditor and they get the dollar amount and it comes back. So the mental health board, or the county commissioners, they won't meet again until June the 3rd. So I've done everything I can. I'm waiting to find out when they will have their meeting of the levy review committee, because it's going to be very important this year. This is the last year of collection for that, and they need to approve it. I am hearing some things that concern me over at City Council. At a recent public safety committee, they were discussing children with mental health needs, and a member of City Council, who shall remain nameless, did make the comment, well, you can't give a child today the kind of medicine that my parents gave me. And the presenter said, yeah, I know what kind of medicine you're talking about. Everybody in the room knew what he was talking about. That did not seem like an appropriate comment for a public meeting. It sounds like maybe City Council needs some education as far as children with mental health concerns. City Council is having some strange meetings over there. At last week's agenda review, it's not uncommon for them to hang around half an hour after the meetings. Well, after that, I was sitting out in the lobby. I was waiting to talk to one of them about a zoning issue, and 3 of them came out and went into another conference room. The Ohio Revised Code says you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to come out of a public meeting and then immediately go into a closed door special meeting. They have a conference room on the 21st floor. They can go there anytime they want, but other council members might poke their head in the door and say, what are you guys talking about? So I'm not going to narc on them, but I have voiced my concern. They're not supposed to have a public meeting and then immediately go into some kind of a special meeting. It's kind of chaotic over there right now. Very important meeting this Thursday. That'll be the Plan Commission, a long agenda, but one of the items is going to be the tobacco policy. City Council just turned down 4 of them. And so hopefully this policy will clarify what is a tobacco shop, what is a cigar store, what is a vape shop, and what can we do? They've looked at other cities and they're going to make the recommendations. It'll be reviewed by Plan Commission and then go to City Council next month. And hopefully we think we're going to get more of these applications. Once you've been turned in, you have to wait a year before you can come back, but there are plenty of people out there applying for them. So we'll see what happens on Thursday with that. Hopefully they'll come up with some kind of a guidepost or something for the city council members. And just a bit of nostalgia. It was 50 years ago today, May the 6th, 1975. This is back when city council was in the safety building, same building as the police officers. And during a city council meeting, a 20-year-old UT student approached Mayor Harry Kessler and hit him in the face with a pie. He ran out the door, but he didn't get very far. The cops caught him and brought him back. It was not political. He was put up to it by some other people. It was a publicity stunt. And when Mayor Harry Kessler announced to the group, I'm not going to press any charges, because he could have. He could throw him in jail and prosecute him to the full extent of the law and ruin the kid's life. He said, I'm not going to press any charges. He got a big round of applause. So today, in our political climate where nobody forgives anything, forgiveness is in short supply, I think it's just a good idea to remember a splendid act of forgiveness that happened 50 years ago today. Mayor Kessler did not press charges. If this happened today, it'd be on CNN, attaching sinister motives. But yet, 50 years ago today, I made sure they knew about it over at the government center. So thank you for listening.
So, my fellow board members, I have an incredible announcement. We have received for Danny's Place a anonymous $10,000 donation that came with a challenge. It's a matching $10,000 donation, and the board and staff have been challenged to raise $10,000 amongst themselves. But it will be a matching, so it's up to 10,000. So one of the things I would like to do is I'm going to pass out a piece of paper to my fellow board members and have you write down the name and the amount that you would be comfortable in contributing. And it, you know, anything from 50 cents to, I won't take over $1 million. I'm just letting you all know, I will not take over $1 million. But anywhere from 50 cents up to $1 million, nothing over $1 million. If you could fill this out and then get this back to me, that way, and I can follow up with some phone calls maybe.
You want them to take it home with them.
Yeah, and think about it, whatever. But I just thought if I gave you a little piece of paper and you'd open it up and be like, oh, I can't forget about this. Yeah, I'm not collecting them today. So just so that you know that, or if you want to email me, that's fine too. And then I needed to talk to my fellow board members regarding May 28th. I know I've had a couple people come up to me and wanting more details, and they had a lot of questions. So I just want to briefly go over that. May 28th, which is a Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30 p. is when we're having a very intimate, we're trying to keep it to about 40 people invited, group of people who have the ability to donate is one of the qualifications and whatnot. And of course, the board members as well. Thank you. Are all of you, I hope it's on your calendar, and I hope I get a resounding yes, I will be there. From each and every one of you. It's Wednesday, May 28th.
At what time?
It's from 5:30 to 7:30.
Location?
Danny's Place.
2333.
Oh, that's
2333.
I can walk.
Email about that or can we?
Yes,
So I can put it on the calendar.
yes, that you should expect that by the end of the week. I want everybody to put this on their calendar.
I'll send you a meeting invite.
Okay, that'll be great. If you'll do that, Scott, that's great.
What's the name of it?
What is the name of
She
it?
wanted to know the name of
What's
it.
the name of the event?
We didn't name it.
It's a
Danny's
Danny's Place
Place.
fundraiser.
Yeah.
It's a fundraiser.
There we go, Danny's Place fundraiser. No, I didn't actually give it a name, to be really honest with you, because I've been on the phone calling and inviting people
That's good.
and asking them you know, what they would feel comfortable in donating and whatnot. And I also wanted to extend the opportunity to each and every one of you, if you have anyone you would like to invite. Like I said, I had a couple people come up to me when we first made the announcement and said, I would like 2 of those invitations, or I would like 3 of those invitations, or 1 of those invitations. So if you have individuals you would like to invite, please get that to me as soon as possible. So, because I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to invite and to participate in this particular event. Okay.
Of the YMCA.
Okay, so, great, could you email me that? Yeah, just email me that, and then, I'll mail you an invitation that you can forward and put information in there as though it's coming from you.
Did you say the time?
Yep, 5:30 to 7:30. And I'll be right there. Now, what's gonna be special about this, and what I've been pushing, is the fact that we will be giving tours. Prior to, now, there, you have to wear tennis shoes, and it's in the invitation too, and you will still receive an invitation. It's wear, you know, comfortable clothing, it's not a fancy event, because it's very casual.
Okay.
But I did wanna share that with everybody, so that everybody would have the chance. I'm super excited. Let me know. And everybody, do you all have my information, my email address? Okay, perfect.
Email out with a meeting invite with a reminder.
Awesome, but I just wanted to let everybody know about that, so you won't be surprised if you get a follow-up phone call from me or anything like that. So thank you so much, and I think this is just so exciting. Our goal is to raise $65,000 that night, just so you're aware.
To raise what?
65 that evening, and we're more than halfway there.
Oh.
So just a big push,
Okay.
and this $10,000.
Good job.
Excited. Yes. Well, Jeff and Donna, Danny's parents played a very big role in helping us get there.
That's awesome.
A very big role, and they will be there that evening too. So if you haven't had the chance to meet them, this is a great opportunity to meet them. Yeah, very special people. So thank you very much for your time. I know that this was not the best meeting to do this at, but I wanted to do it as close to the 28th as possible. So,
Yeah.
and it's coming up, because I didn't want to fall off anyone's radar. Okay. I'm done.
Christina, what about
Christina?
you? What about your meeting, your grand opening on Friday?
Yes, we're opening our second location on Friday. The fact that I'm here, breathing and alive is a miracle. So we'll have our ribbon cutting on Friday. I would love to extend an invitation if you want to come to that, but it will be very wild that day. But I would also love to extend an invitation to this group to do a private tour of the facility. It's a collaboration, 2 stories. South second location on the 1st floor. So I'd be happy to talk about it after.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh,